Imagine the year 1789. Paris erupts in chaos as the Bastille Falls, blood staining the streets of the French Revolution. Centuries earlier, a cryptic quatrain by Nostradamus warned of the great city's people stirred. The false rumor, blood poured forth in vengeance. Meanwhile, in the shadowed corridors of medieval monasteries, St. Malachy's papal prophecies whispered of a future pope reigning amid the final persecution of the Holy Church. Two men, separated by 400 years of history, both claimed to pierce the veil of time, but were they divine messengers, cunning mystics, or accidental poets? The question lingers like smoke from a funeral pyre. What if their visions are still unfolding today? The allure lies in the eerie precision of their ambiguity. Saint Malachy, the 12th century Irish saint, etched 112 Latin phrases, each a riddle, tied to a future pope. His words, spare and symbolic, cling to the papacy like ghostly fingerprints. Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olive, foreshadowing Benedict XVI, a Benedictine monk whose order's emblem bears an olive branch. Nostradamus, the enigmatic French seer, traded in apocalyptic theater verses dripping with astrological dread. He scribbled of fire falling from the sky and beasts mad with hunger, lines later twisted to fit Hitler's rise, nuclear bombs, and even 9/11s. But here's the chilling truth. Their power isn't in what they say, but in what we hear. A prophecy is a mirror, reflecting our darkest fears back at us. Consider the haunting symmetry. When World War II's flames devoured Europe, believers pored over Nostradamus' quatrains, insisting he'd named Hitler, Hister, and foretold death camps, sex, famine, kingdoms, plague, confusion. Malachy's final pope, Petrus Romanus, looms like a spectral deadline, a warning that Francis I's reign could herald the apocalypse. Yet skeptics dissect these claims with forensic coldness. Are we stitching meaning into chaos? After all, Nostradamus never mentions Hitler outright. Just as Malachy's papal list mysteriously resurfaced in 1595, conveniently after half the popes it described had already ruled. So why does the shiver persist? Because prophecy thrives in the liminal space between faith and fear. It asks us to confront the unthinkable, that our world might be a haunted script, penned by long-dead hands. As cities burn and empires crumble, the same haunting question echoes: are we living there? Endgame, or is history just a loop of desperate hope, dressed as destiny? The answer, perhaps, is written in the ashes they left behind. In the damp, torchlit corridors of 12th century Ireland, where mist clung to the hills like a shroud, a young monk named Malachy y Morgair received visions that would haunt the Vatican for a millennium. Born into the chaos of Norman invasions, Malachy's life was a tapestry of piety and paradox. By 30, he'd risen to Archbishop of Armagh, battling corruption with one hand while scribbling cryptic Latin phrases with the other 12 enigmatic lines now known as the Prophecy of the Popes. Each phrase, sharp as a dagger's edge, was said to encode the fate of every future pontiff. Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olive, pointed to Benedict XVI, a Benedictine monk whose order's crest bears olive branches. But the final entry, Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, drips with apocalyptic dread, a pope reigning as the Holy Church is persecuted before the world's end. Today, as Pope Francis the 112th Pope presides over a fractured globe, believers whisper, is this the curtain call Malachy foresaw? Malachy's prophecies are cold, surgical, and cloaked in Catholic symbology, a far cry from the feverish verses of Michel de Nostradamus, the 16th century French apothecary, who rebranded himself as Nostradamus. Picture him, a gaunt figure hunched over a splintered desk in Provence, quill scratching by candlelight as plague carts rattled outside. Once a healer, he'd turned to the stars after losing his wife and children to disease, channeling his grief into Les Prophecies minus 942 quatrains of rhyming doom, veiled in astrological jargon and anagrams. Where Malachy's work feels like a divine spreadsheet, Nostradamus trafficked in poetic chaos. The great fire will fall from the sky, he wrote, a line later claimed to foreshadow Hiroshima. Hister, a misspelled reference to the Danube, Hister, became Hitler in hindsight. Even 9/11 was retrofitted into his lines. Asterisk earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause tremors around the new city. Asterisk, but here lies the sinister genius of their methods. Malachy's prophecies, though rigidly structured, thrive on ambiguity dressed as precision. His phrases are keys without locks open to endless interpretation. Was ex Castro Tiberius. From a castle on the Tiber, truly about Urban VIII, whose family crest featured a castle, or mere coincidence? Nostradamus, meanwhile, weaponized vagueness. His quatrains are Rorschach tests for the terrified. Take his infamous 1999 prediction. Asterisk, in the 7th month a great king of terror will come from the sky. When July 1999 passed uneventfully, believers shifted the goalposts, linking it to 9/11's asteroid fears or Vladimir Putin's rise. Critics scoff. Asterisk, is this prophecy or just poetry masquerading as clairvoyance? Asterisk, yet the darker truth is how these men's legacies have seeped into modernity's bloodstream. Malachy's papal list, lost for centuries, resurfaced in 1595 after half the popes it described had already reigned. Was it a divine blueprint or a medieval forgery? Tailored to fit the past? Nostradamus defenders, undeterred, mine his verses for COVID parallels. The horrible war prepared in the West, the next year will come the pestilence. But their staying power isn't about accuracy, it's about mythology. Malachy's prophecies are a sword hanging over the Vatican, a whisper that even God's vicars march toward oblivion. Nostradamus? He's the patron saint of existential dread. His verses a funhouse mirror reflecting every generation's nightmares. Consider the chilling symmetry. Malachy, the saint, bound his visions to the church's spine, a prophecy with an expiration date. Nostradamus, the outcast, cast his net wider, weaving a net of words to snare eternity. Both men, though separated by centuries, understood humanity's weakness. We crave patterns in the void, order in the storm. Their prophecies endure not because they're true, but because we need them to be. After all, what's more terrifying that the future is unwritten, or that it was written long ago by men who saw the end in their bones? Picture this, 1945, a mushroom cloud blooming over Hiroshima, its hellish glow searing the sky. Decades earlier, Nostradamus scribbled, "Fire falling from the sky," a line later twisted into prophecy's gotcha moment. Yet across the centuries, St. Malachy's visions simmered in the Vatican's shadow. His phrase, "burning fire," pinned to Pope Pius X, whose coat of arms bore flames. Two prophets, two styles, one a scalpel, the other a fog. But which cuts deeper? Malachy's prophecy of the popes is a cryptographer's puzzle, 112 terse Latin tags, each a breadcrumb for papal destiny. Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olive, seemed to nail Benedict XVI, a Benedictine monk whose order's emblem cradled an olive branch. But here's the rub: specificity is prophecy's trickster god. Does it make predictions credible, or just easier to retrofit? Malachy's laser focus on popes gives his work an air of divine spreadsheets, but when the 112th Pope, Francis I, took the throne, the cryptic Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, ignited whispers of apocalypse. Was this a saint's warning or a self-fulfilling omen stitched from desperation? Nostradamus, the poet of doom, danced in ambiguity's gray haze. His quatrains are Rorschach blots for the ages. Take Hister, a word skeptics argue referred to the Danube, Hister, until the 20th century contorted it into Hitler. Or two brothers torn apart, retrofitted to 9/11's Twin Towers. Though the line originally hinted at mythical siblings, his defenders cling to these elastic interpretations like life rafts, yet his track record is a hall of smoke and mirrors. For every hit, the Great Fire equals World War II bombs. There's a parade of misses. Where was Nostradamus when the Black Death ravaged Europe? Silent. What of his famed 1999 apocalypse? A dud. Malachy, by contrast, boasts eerie papal. Parallels Pius X's flaming crest. Pole VI's flower of flowers, his lilied coat of arms, but his list's sudden 1595 rediscovery. After half its popes had reigned, reeks of a medieval hoax. Prophecy, it seems, is a game of cherry-picking. Enter the skeptics armed with Occam's razor. Their case: a cocktail of cold reading and confirmation bias. Nostradamus verses are linguistic shapeshifters, their old French quirks mistranslated for modern terror. Post-World War II, publishers quietly tweaked Hister to Hitler in new editions, while Malachy's vague phrases, the glory of the olive, bend to fit any pope with botanical ties. And humanity? We're complicit. Our brains are pattern-seeking missiles wired to remember the hits, the towers fall, the pandemic, and discard the misses, the thousands of quatrains about obscure 16th century feuds. Even Nostradamus editors played puppeteers. After Hiroshima, his fire from the sky quatrain was suddenly everywhere, conveniently stripped of its original context, asterisk a dragon-shaped meteor. Asterisk closing parenthesis. Yet the haunting question lingers. Why do we want to believe? Perhaps because prophecy is the ultimate comfort. It suggests chaos has a script, that apocalypses come with spoiler alerts. Malachy's final pope dangles the threat of an expiration date on existence. Itself a storybook ending for a world terrified of randomness. Nostradamus, meanwhile, offers a twisted solace, asterisk C. Even the worst disasters were foretold, asterisk we're not adrift. We're following a map drawn by madmen. But peel back the curtain, and the truth chills deeper. These prophets didn't predict the future, they predicted us. Our hunger to slot their words into every crisis, our need to turn poets into oracles. Malachy's papal list and Nostradamus quatrains are mirrors, reflecting not destiny but the human heart's bottomless dread. So when you hear their names whispered during the next pandemic, war, or eclipse, ask yourself, are we decoding fate or just confessing our own terror of the dark? Asterisk in the glow of smartphone screens where TikTok's algorithm spins doom scrolls into dopamine, a new breed of prophets has resurrected the ghosts of Malachy and Nostradamus. Teenagers in hoodies dissect Nostradamus quatrains over lo-fi beats, linking beasts mad with hunger to eye overlords and the Great Fire to climate collapse. Conspiracy theorists armed with green screens and haunted hashtags splice Pope Francis' wary smile with Malachy's Petrus Romanus, the final pope whose reign, they claim, ticks closer to apocalypse as wildfires devour continents and chatbots whisper rebellion. The Vatican stays silent, but the whispers metastasize. Asterisk is Francis the last sentinel before the abyss? Asterisk prophecy has always been a shapeshifter, but today it wears a viral mask. Nostradamus, the 16th century apothecary, now trends alongside hashtag WWII and hashtag quantum apocalypse, his verses stripped of context and fed into the meme machine. When a quatrain vaguely references plague or asterisk celestial strife, it's screenshot, shared, and weaponized proof that he knew asterisk. Malachy's papal list, once confined to dusty theological debates, floods Reddit threads debating if France's Jesuit past, Peter the Roman, fulfills the end-time script. Skeptics scoff, but the allure is narcotic. In a world of unstable algorithms and unstable climates, prophecy offers the illusion of a blueprint. Yet the true horror isn't in the predictions, it's in their cultural afterlife. Nostradamus, the patron saint of paranoia, haunts Hollywood vaults. The man who saw tomorrow framed him as a Cassandra with a quill, while Malachy's ghost lingers in Catholic lore, a sword dangling over the Sistine Chapel. Every papal conclave now carries a subtext of existential dread. Asterisk will the next vote trigger Malachy's doomsday clock? Even AI's rise gets filtered through prophecy's lens. Tech brothers joke about digital Nostradamus as neural nets churn out synthetic predictions. But strip away the irony, and the old fear remains. Asterisk, what if they were right all along? Asterisk, the modern twist? Prophecy is no longer confined to leather-bound tomes. It's a crowdsourced nightmare, a game of telephone across centuries. TikTok alchemists blend Nostradamus with QAnon, Malachy with anti-vax lore, stitching ancient warnings to modern panic. When COVID cloaked the globe, Nostradamus' pestilence lines went supernova. When ChatGPT mused about sentience, Conspiracists quoted Malachy's persecution of the church as code for a Silicon uprising. The prophet's words, once static, now mutate faster than a virus each retweet, each deepfake, bending them to new terrors. But ask yourself, why does this ancient art thrive in the age of science? Because prophecy isn't about truth, it's about control. To claim Nostradamus predicted AI is to tame the unknown, to cage chaos in a quatrain. To obsess over Malachy's last pope is to pretend the climate crisis has a biblical cheat code. We flock to these stories like moths to a flame, desperate to believe someone, anyone, mapped the madness. Yet in the shadows the prophets laugh. Nostradamus, the failed plague doctor, and Malachy, the medieval mystic, never imagined their words would outlive empires or fuel TikToks, their true legacy. A mirror held to humanity's endless loop of hope and horror. As satellites watch icebergs melt and reactors hum with AI, one question chills deeper than any prophecy, asterisk, are we creating the doom they described, or simply dressing our despair in their dead men's rhymes? The answer flickers in the digital void, half-lit and forever out of reach. Beneath the cracked plaster of a 21st century tenement, a teenager live streams to thousands, her face lit by the sickly blue glow of Nostradamus quatrains scrolling on her phone. In Rome, a priest traces Malachy's Petrus Romanus. In a weathered manuscript, his breath shallow as Pope Francis prays for a planet on fire. Two scenes, one truth: we are still haunted, not by the prophets, but by the primal wound they prod the human terror of chaos. Prophecy endures because it offers the oldest lie, that the future is not random, that someone somehow holds the map. But here's the rub. Malachy and Nostradamus didn't predict our doom. We did. Consider the evidence. Malachy's papal riddles, Nostradamus' foggy verses, their empty vessels. We fill them with our dread. When COVID choked cities, we clawed through 16th century poetry for plague references. When AI began dreaming, we grafted silicon nightmares onto asterisk beasts of iron. Even Francis, the Jesuit pope bearing the weight of end times, lore becomes a Rorschach test, to liberals a reformer, to trad Catholics a harbinger, to TikTok a meme. The prophet's accuracy is irrelevant. What matters is the ache they soothe, the illusion that pandemics, wars, and rogue algorithms are part of a plan, not the scream of entropy. Yet the darkest twist lies in the mirror. Nostradamus, the failed doctor who buried his family in plague, Pitts and Malachy, the medieval mystic drafting papal obituaries, never imagined their words would outlive empires. They were men, flawed and grieving, trying to make sense of their own storms. We turned them into oracles. We stitched their words to every crisis, past and future. In doing so, we authored the real prophecy, a self-fulfilling gospel of fear. Every time we cite Nostradamus to explain a shooting star or twist Malachy to fit a pope's death, we resurrect them. We need them. So, where's the verdict? There isn't one, only a warning. The next time you hear a viral prediction about AI overlords or climate collapse, remember, Malachy and Nostradamus aren't speaking. We are. Their verses are just parchment and ink. We're the ones breathing hellfire into them. The final question isn't whether they foresaw our age, but why we're so desperate to believe they did. Is it because the alternative, a universe without scripts, without endings, is too vast to face? And so the circle closes. As long as glaciers melt in Nissel's arm, as long as humanity stares into the void and begs for a sign, the prophet's whispers will echo. Not because they were right, but because we're wrong. Wrong about control, wrong about fate, wrong about the dark. The real prophecy was never in their words. It's in our pulse, our sweat, our sleepless nights. They will never be forgotten. Not because they saw the future, but because we can't stop inventing it. So let the TikTokers parse and the scholars scoff. Let the apocalypse tick on. The end was never the point. The prophecy is us.